Recently on the Mayo Football Podcast, yes, we like to drop into your feed every so often and get some highlights from what we have on patreon.com/Mayo Podcast for all our loyal Patreons. Mayo have lost the Connacht Senior Football Final. That's going to dominate heavily in our chat today. We have clips from lots of other pods as well to take you through what you've been missing in the last couple of weeks. We'll have a little chat off the end of this as well. John Gunnigan, how are you?
I'm good, Rob. Yeah, time's a healer, as they say. And where are we now? It's Thursday evening. So the healing, I think, has started after Sunday. It was a bit of a downer, wasn't it, Rob? And we're going to cover that, obviously, in the clips you're going to hear here. But it is funny, like a 1-point win and everything is fine. And we got that, of course, last year in Pearse Stadium when we beat Galway by a point. You lose by a point and everything sure isn't okay. And I think that's going to be a flavour of what we're going to hear in these clips as well.
Yeah, we have had a couple of pods since that game. One immediately afterwards, as always, our final whistle offering, and the other one a day later when we had a chance to kind of rewatch the game. Billy Joe Padden and Colm Keys were on that one. You had Colin Boyle and Barry Cullinane. There's some of the voices you're going to hear a little bit later. But let's take you on a little journey. Let's start with the game that started the weekend. The Mayo Miners have been playing some pretty damn good football. And our first clip is from the Final Whistle podcast after their victory over Leitrim. Colm Boyle was on that, Edwin McGrail as well, and Mike Finnerty was presenting. And one clip that we just decided to choose from it is just maybe a little example of some of the innovation that's going on in the coaching there and some of the new ideas, because the lads picked up on a bit of a structure to how Mayo were defending, which I felt was quite interesting. Have a listen to this.
You just mentioned something there that reminds me to ask you, if you weren't here, you obviously won't have seen it. The way Mayo defenders position themselves when Mayo don't have the ball. Can you just explain to listeners how they do it, what they do, and why it's so unusual?
It's, I suppose the biggest way I could put it, or the biggest example of it, it's almost like watching a Pep Guardiola Man City team move in sync with each other as the play is developing from one side to another. Like it is, especially up in the commentary box there, Mike, and you're looking down at it, where I suppose we saw it from Tuam last week, probably didn't have as good a view, but when the ball is up there under the pitch, the Mayo players are pressuring the ball, and it's amazing as the half forward line move up, the midfielders move up, the half forwards move up, they all leave their men, and the full forward line, the full back line, more importantly, they move up, and a lot of the time they were probably playing 15-20 yards in front of their men, trying to squeeze the pitch as much as possible. And if the ball gets transferred over the far side of the pitch, now bear in mind I'm talking about Leitrim being inside their own 45, the whole Mayo full back line moves across to that side as well. Like it's fascinating to watch, and what will be really fascinating to see that is against a good opposition, which you're hoping that we will play maybe in a Connacht final, or hopefully if Mayo win that in an All-Ireland semi-final.
EBS, the Mortgage Masters, are proud partners of the Mayo Football Podcast. So whether you're at home or abroad, EBS in Castlebar is your one-stop shop for advice and information on mortgages. You can find them online or call into the office on Market Street in Castlebar.
There you have it. The Miners continue apace, John.
They do indeed, yeah. And I think in terms of analysis, I think we were talking about the last such a show that we did here. We talked about how deep Colm Boyle goes, that the rest of us mere mortals just see things on the surface, where he goes down several layers below that. So I think that's another example of it. Yeah, I mean, look at the Miners are going great guns. Fair play to them. We don't want to big them up too much because they are only kids after all. They're really enjoying their football. It's great to see they're into the Connacht final now. It'll be against probably Roscommon and I would imagine Galway. Surprise, surprise. But it's still all to play for in the last round, and we hope the lads just continue to plough on and get another win in the bag.
Yeah, real chance to keep the momentum taking over. You mentioned Colm Boyle. We have a lot of content online that was part of the preview and the build-up, the real technical analysis, and Colin and Barry Cullinane had a super podcast on Monday where they just really got in deep into the content. We won't be taking clips from that because ultimately that's, as we say, is a bit perishable as content. And now that the game has been played, that said, I will highlight like one of the nuggets from Colm Boyle was right at the end of the pod. I was like, Colin, can you pick out a player that's likely to pop into the top 3 of John's Man of the Match podcast that's outside of the norm? Someone that you mightn't be thinking of. And he said, thought about it for a second and went, Matty Ruan. He always plays well against Galway. Oh, I hope you put some money on that, John.
Yeah, he hit the bullseye, didn't he?
He surely did.
Yeah, that was pretty on the money, as it turns out, because of course Matty won that, and not only that, but he got nominated for the GAA's Player of the Week as well, and was on their Team of the Week. So yeah, so absolutely, that was he nailed that one.
That was one of the bizarre elements of that game where Mayo actually probably had the better of midfield. No one would have saw that coming in the Mayo defeat. But anyways, we'll talk about that kind of stuff later. Want to give you some flavour of the build-up as well. There was lots of fun as well. For example, Mike went off to Galway and Salt Hill at that rate on the Wednesday to chat to Colin, Sheridan, friend of the podcast, and Finian, Hanley, former Galway footballer. We just took a clip of some of the crack they were having in the build-up to give you a flavour of what's there.
But like, no, the whole thing, the whole day, everything about it, the excitement, and like even, and we'll probably get into this, but that one of Galway's star players on Sunday, hopefully for him, hopefully for Galway, is the son of, a great Mayo footballer in the past, who also like has, obviously we're going to start in the cottage on Sunday, Mike. We might end up in Ward's later on, Ward's Hotel in North Salt Hill. But all these things really add to the uniqueness of the occasion. And Anthony Finnerty's son, obviously Rob, I'm talking about, and like you couldn't but wish him well too as a Mayo man in a weird kind of a way. And I think an awful lot of people in Mayo root for him for that reason, and I think that's pretty genuine. So I think animosity is probably the best word on game day, and it's healthy, and long may it last, because we need days like these. And we've had a bit of perspective in the last couple of years where we've nearly lost them, with pandemics and all the rest of it. So to be back here in Pearse Stadium on a Sunday, hopefully, as we say, it'll be a fine day. It's brilliant. It really, really is.
Yeah, Colin talked there about the closeness of the connections, Finian, and I mean, just off the top of my head, you're obviously friendly with Maurice Sheridan. Gavin Duffy is a member of the Salt Hill Knocknacarra Club. Colin mentioned Anthony Finnerty as well, and of course you worked with John O'Mahony last year. John O was managing Salt Hill Knocknacarra. You've now taken over there. What was that like? What was it like working alongside John O, the legendary All-Ireland winning Galway manager who brought Mayo to the promised land in '89? Obviously couldn't beat Cork in the final, but just tell us maybe what you learned from that experience, getting to spend time with him and picking his Mayo brain.
He's a phenomenal man. I suppose, look, everyone respects John O. I think he's respected all over the country. He probably is one of the greatest Gaelic football managers of all time. There's no question. And people might go, well, wait a sec, why? Well, when you look at his record, winning Connacht with Leitrim, getting to 89, you know what I mean? He's done so much, and he almost got us over the line for our 4th ever championship win in Salt Hill 2 years ago, a kick of the ball in it. So he just has that personality. He's obsessed with the game. He thinks meticulously about the game. I suppose when he rang me, I had no interest. I had 20 years done playing senior football. I was out of there, not a hope, play or do anything, and obviously having the chats at home, I had already told him that it was it for me. But it's very hard to say no to John O'Mahony, and he'll ring you again, and then he might bump into you on the street by accident or something like that. He's that type of character. But look, the man is in fact, he would be driving up and down from Balladream. But like, I worked with him first ever 2003, I think, an under 21. He brought a couple of the minors in after that, and then in 2004 we played Mayo down in Castlebar, and then I was in the senior panel that year or whatever it was, but he had left then or whatever, so we didn't come. Actually we did, we went to America in 2006. The old Railway Cup was on there, and it was interwoven, Kevin O'Neill and the Mayo lads, Mort and David Brady and ourselves, Savo. There was a crew of us at that time, and Jono was the manager or whatever it was, and we'd be kind of slagging Jono because we'd be heading to Boston to a Railway Cup final, the dream. Jono would be absolutely, tunnel vision, preparation and everything. So look, to work with him and to learn from him, second to none, because the guy has written the book, he's done it all. and there's a reason why he's done it all. You know, I don't know what age he is now, but he's still got the hunger and the burning desire. It's absolutely incredible. So no, it was a privilege to work with him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was a good clip, Rob, because I mean, as you said, we had oodles of content last week, but most of it was of the looking ahead to the match variety and talking about matchups and stuff like that. And clearly that's past its sell-by date once the match has been played. But this was more of a preserved variety, if you like. I thought Colin's stuff about Rob Finnerty and the whole occasion I thought was interesting, but also what Finian Hanley had to say about John O'Mahony, because clearly John O'Mahony is a revered figure in Galway, arguably more so than Mayo now. You know, which I think would be a touch unfair, and I've been unfair about it myself indeed on the blog more than once. But you know, he managed Mayo to an All-Ireland title, the under-21 title that you and I spoke about at length with the lads there some time ago. But also he became just within a whisker of managing, I guess, 2 counties to an All-Ireland title. Though you would wonder if he won with us in 89, would he have ever ended up managing Galway? But I just thought that was interesting in terms of the Mayo Galway crossover, if you like.
Yeah, really good clip to pick out. You've picked out a clip from Here Comes the Weekend as well. Again, lots of technical analysis of the game that ultimately is in the past now. But Stephen Drake, great to get him back, was on with Mike. They had a bit of crack at the end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because a lot of the heavyweight discussion they had was looking forward to the game and who'd match up with who and all the rest. So as I said, that didn't date all that well. But what did was Drakey's opinion about spuds, and we thought just to lighten things up, because there is a lot of doom and gloom at the minute, and we're going to showcase more of the doom and gloom in a minute. So we had Drakey's opinion about spuds. I have to say I was a bit disappointed about that, because he said that he was a rooster man. Jesus, Rob, any man worth his salt talking about spuds at this time of year has to talk about queens. I'm sorry, that's it. It's end of story. You know, queens, flowery spuds with salt and with butter and with nothing else. That's it, you know.
John, in my gig, I have to be very neutral on all spuds are available, and all spuds are, you know, good value. Moving on. Here it is. Here's the clip.
Nice to end on a high. Pleasure to have you back on the pod. Looking forward to having a few Wexford strawberries and maybe a few Wexford spuds with you on over the weekend. Yeah. Set us up nicely for Pierce Stadium. Looking forward to hearing your recommendations. Are you a records man or a Maris Piper man? You know, what do you recommend?
I am a rooster man. I'm traditional. Yeah, they're a good all rounder, I have to say. You know, but I will say something like, and I know it gets thrown out a lot. Geez, there's nothing better than when the new potatoes come out here in Wexford. They are now, they're a bit of heaven now, a little bit of heaven.
You've changed. You've gone from avocado on toast when you were in Galway to eating roosters in Wexford.
Listen, you can't beat a good spud, Finno. But now, in fair, like, you know, I do get a bit arsey as well. Like, I'd make potato rosties as well and that sort of stuff. So, you know, you throw the old poached egg on that too. So.
Here's the side of Stephen Drake that podcast listeners haven't seen before.
Yeah, Rob, I'm coming out of that salivating. I want me queens. I want me queens. I do. And you do sell them, don't you?
I wonder, would we boost our subscriber base if we just got Drakey on for like a Drake's Bakes podcast every week, just talking about what he's cooking? I think that might actually fill the gap. We might need things to fill the gap if Mayo continue what they're at, John. Let's be honest.
Indeed, yeah. No, I was just thinking that's an off-season topic, isn't it?
Yeah, which could be coming around faster than we want. Not for that for now. The fallout, the game. Myself and yourself just kind of were in the main stand, so we were only mere meters away from Colm Boyle after the contest, and we got up to him, and even when the trophy hadn't been handed over, we had already pressed record. As always, Barry Cullinane, win, lose or draw, dropped in. Fair play to him. So we wanted to take a little flavour of the Final Whistle podcast.
The key thing about that, and like, it was such a risky kick up with Colin Reek, but in fairness to him, he got it off the first couple of passes have to be quick. So when you're in a tight situation like that and you've got a team pressed up on you, Dunham Q gets it away to Loftus, his next instinct is, I've got to get away with this. If you take a solo and take it into contact, the referee's always going to give the free against you, because number one, you've got the crowd, you've got momentum against you, you've got all that, they're baying for blood. Number two, they probably feel like a couple of decisions went against them, and you take that ball into contact, the free's going against you. So you got to get your head up and you got to think, I need to move. Even if it's a 40-yard kick pass up the pitch, you need to get rid of it. And unfortunately, once he turned into the first tackle, the second man there was to meet him. It was always going to be a free and it was always going to be a turnover.
Did you see that coming? When Tommy fists over the bar, do you think you're finished?
No, but I thought taking off Aidan O'Shea was an absolute kamikaze decision. And I
can't believe that either.
I thought Jordan Flynn, like, I know he was after ballooning one up into there, but like I would really question what Mayo management were at that stage now.
The thing about taking off both of them fellas, and I'd agree with you, is that when you're under pressure from your own kick out in the last 5 minutes and you're looking out the field, you're Colm Boyle and you're looking for big men, you're looking for physicality, two or bigger men are gone, and all of a sudden Galway with Maher and Matthew Tierney and Conroy and Kelly look far more dominant out there. So I think that's a great point that you're after making.
Let's jump back for a second to what Barry said. Mayo management, decisions. Like, how much pressure now on this group after not winning a Connacht title? How significant is the fact that the trophy isn't there?
They'll be sick going into training this week. Sick. And I know they've 2 weeks, but you imagine going back there now Wednesday night after losing a last minute game like that when you're 2 points up going into time. Like, you're literally, the morale, I'm not going to say it's on the floor, but you're just kind of head scratching, wondering how it went wrong. But you're going to have to lift yourself now, and all eyes on Cavan now, because Cavan will be looking at that, and especially the first half, and they'll be thinking, Jesus, because it's fun time. I was with Jonathan Higgins there and off the ball, and two of us were saying at half time, if Mickey Hart is watching this, he's not going to be losing too much sleep about either team, at the minute. So I think, but in general context, I thought the second half was a far better game. But where we go after this, we've a battle on our hands to get to a quarter final. I don't think Barry said it could take 4 games, and it's probably looking that way. So
I don't think so. I think it was all about doing the 3 in a row. It was all about getting back on top of Mayo again. Like, I spent a lot of time in Galway this week, and I was part of a Galway Bay FM broadcast there earlier on out at Blackrock Cottage, and Joe Bergen was there, Sean Armstrong, Finian, Hanley. They were very bullish coming into this game because really they didn't think Mayo were up to much. That was really, I think, where a lot of their confidence was coming from. Plus, Welsh was back, Comer was back, Tierney was back, Kelly was back, and they felt they had enough. Now, just about. And like, it's so fickle as well when you think about it. Like, Conor Gleeson was on his way to becoming the villain, earlier on in that Connacht final, and yet he leaves as the hero, like, pressure free to win it. There's reporters down there literally queuing up to interview him, and look, on a personal level, I'm delighted for him because he hasn't always had it easy in the goal for Galway, and Mayo put a lot of pressure on him. But I just think a lot of Mayo's big players today didn't perform the way that we know they can. Now Galway got their a lot of their matchups right, and they obviously identified Ryan O'Donoghue as a major threat, as we knew they would, and we just couldn't get quite enough scores out of the others. I think it's going to take a while to pick through this one, Rob, and there are so many kind of turning points when you think back. But yeah, it's a very sombre Mayo dressing room down there.
Yeah, we had a succession of voices there, didn't we, Rob? As you said, like, we pressed the record button before Sean Kelly had got his hands on the Nestor Cup, and I was wondering, like, how would it hold up as regards sound, because there was a lot of sound coming from the ground. Some very, very happy Galway supporters out on the pitch, and they fairly celebrated their victory, and good luck to them. But yeah, so interesting insights there from Colin. I love that Barry came along, because I've always said, like, he comes along to us in good times and in bad from Galway's perspective, and he always tells it like it is. His insights and his opinion in terms of the taking off of Aidan O'Shea, I thought was well made. And then Mike was able to give us the mood from the dressing room, but also the mood that he had picked up from inside Galway before the game, and also where this defeat leaves Mayo. And as I said at the top, isn't it? It's amazing, isn't it? Like, a 1-point win will mask everything. It's the greatest balm of all. Whereas a 1-point defeat, Jesus, there's no stone left unturned in terms of analysing everything that's wrong with us.
Do you know the word I've heard most about the next podcast that you picked a clip out of, John, revisiting the Connacht final, it's called, is that was a tough listen. And yet followed up by, can't really argue with what I heard there, though. I'm now, in fairness, some people will pick apart Colm Key's assessment of some of Goff's decisions at the end. I think I will, anyways. I mean, yes, I think he was in agreement with everyone that Conor Loftus, technical or not, was fouled on that last play, not long before he kind of gave the ball away for over carrying, and key decision. But some of the other calls, I think people are pretty strong about that there were big calls against, and like that was just one example of. But opinions are opinion.
No, they are, and I think people are annoyed about that. But it is interesting that we're not in the situation that I would have detected from people, in relation to decisions made by refs like Joe McQuillan, like Maurice Deegan, like Conor Lane, and of course, most famously of all, poor old Cormac Riley down in Limerick. But I mean, let's face facts, Rob. I mean, we always judge a GA ref on the big calls, because Gaelic football is such a chaotic sport that you're going to get an awful lot of things wrong over the course of 70 minutes. But there are key decisions that need to be got right, and very definitely, David Goff got at least 2 out of 4 very big decisions badly wrong coming down the stretch the last day, and 2 of those were enough to swing that match from a 1-point victory for us to a 1-point defeat. So was David Goff decisive in deciding that game? Yes, absolutely. Now, what's interesting though is that he's not been hauled over the coals for it. I think Mayo supporters are realistic enough to say that the destination of that game was still in our own hands, even with those bad refereeing decisions. And I think it's good that we've owned it. I don't think Kevin McStay needed to own it to the extent that he did, mind you.
No.
I think he could have said 1 or 2 things of a caustic
or said
nature
nothing
refereeing,
sometimes.
but it's not in his nature. But I do think Mayo fans have owned that defeat, and I think it's to our credit that we have.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. We know the fallout from Mayo's league final win over Galway. There was huge amount of anger among Galway supporters at some of the frees that Aidan O'Shea got. We still to this day feel like it's about time he got them and deserves more.
They were called fouls,
Yeah, fouls, exactly. But the bottom line is, there will always be a different perspective, and they will feel like maybe Mayo had one coming. We certainly have to just move on, and have moved on. Thankfully, everyone's in the same place in terms of the All-Ireland series. Okay, some clips from the revisiting the Connacht final. We'll run them through as well. The voices on that show were myself, Mike, Colm Keys, who you'll hear first, and Biddy Joe Padden. Colm Keys on the scope for Galway's improvement.
They are tough, and I suppose if you were to look to the future and the scope of either team, well, there's certainly more in Galway. There's more improvement to me in Galway over the next few weeks and possibly months than there is at Mayo. I just get the sense that Mayo are in and around the ceiling where they are, with not much more to go. If you look at the team, and I've said this, obviously, and it's quite obvious, the personnel hasn't changed much since last year. Tactically, they don't look to really have evolved. The same players are doing much the same things, and that's the sense I've got of Mayo for quite a bit of the season, and certainly after last Sunday. They weren't, I mean, you mentioned humble. I don't think it was a humbling or anything. They lost the game by a point, and I think Kevin McStay rationalised it right. We may have won that game by a point, but there is a huge difference between winning and losing, and I often compare it to, you're going around the bend in an indoor track race and you're on the shoulder, but if you don't have the inside lane, and winning is the inside lane here, it's very, very hard to get by on that outside shoulder. And those last few minutes, you magnify them for everything, because there's dealing with the situations, and Mayo didn't deal with that injury time well at all. Naturally enough, that was reflected on the scoreboard, but all round didn't deal with Daniel O'Flaherty to get through so far at that point of the game. For him to get through that far was a bit of a systems failure. I felt that he should not have got through that far before the foul was committed. Now, obviously, we'll speak about whether all of these were
We might talk about that later. Yeah.
Fouls or not, we might just
Yeah.
leave that for a
Absolutely.
different segment later on. But overall, I said scope. You look at the Galway players that are just coming back, and over the next few weeks will surely improve and bring more to them. I think there's more in Liam Silt, there's more in Sean Kelly, there's more in Shane Walsh. Matthew Tierney will get longer game time. Killian McDade was number 26. Obviously, Mayo have Paddy Durkin to bring back in, and he brings something that has always hurt Galway, and that is real thrust from the back, and that was missing from Mayo. That's what resonates to me about Mayo almost all the time, is that bit of cut and that bit of daring to be able to go through a gap, and that's not happening with this team. It's very safe. It's a very, very safe way of playing the game at the moment, and I just don't think it suits them well. And I've said it here before, a little bit of chaos will always suit them better.
Yeah. That I thought Colin was interesting there. I would say that again, looking at what the fans are saying on the blog, there's not universal agreement with Colin Keys on that, and it is that 1 point win versus 1 point loss. I mean, Galway are a point down with just 2 minutes of injury time left. There's an awful lot they did wrong in that game, but they did get out the right side of it. Does that mean, Porrick Joyce is a tactical genius and our lads are chumps as a result of that? I don't think so. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure I buy the stuff about Galway's room for improvement. Maybe they have, and good luck to them. But I'd say the evidence was a lot thinner on the ground than has been put forward there.
Yeah, and there's another point to your kind of like post game analysis and how easy it can swing, because you often hear like he made 2 ruthless choices in the first half to make the changes and bring off Sweeney and bring off Malloy, and wasn't that brilliant? But the flip side of that is, and Colm Keys said in his own article, had Galway lost, it would have been like, how did you get that selection so wrong at the start? And he still, by his own actions, was admitting he got selections wrong. And this is from a man who was raging at the factual comments about him afterwards, that he hadn't beaten Mayo more than once or something like that.
He's incredibly thin-skinned, Rob, isn't he? That's what I mean, first of all, like, why is he, looking at stuff that people are saying? First of all, why are people sending him stuff? Well, they obviously are, because they know they're going to wind him up. Why is he even looking at it? I mean, that's really bizarre. Like that his bubble can be penetrated to that degree, and that can then be the first thing on his mind when he meets the media after a game that he's won. I mean, that's just utterly bizarre.
It's the Kieran Donny fact. You remember when he won that All Ireland in 14, and what do you think of that, Joe Brawley? Like everyone thought that's funny. I just thought, how could an athlete of his ability and a man who had won so much actually even go there? I remember it just, these are moments that can sometimes kind of shock me, actually, that's where you want to go, instead of, listen, I'm so proud of this group and their resilience and also
the extremely graceless remarks he had for the Mayo team. Look, Brandy, them as a bunch of lads who didn't have any medals. I mean, there's no need for that. There just is absolutely no need for that. And I have to say, like, if that was a Mayo manager saying that about Galway in the aftermath of a win, I wouldn't be happy.
One last clip for you folks. It's just Billy Joe Padden talking about the Damien Comer, David McBride matchup. And it's just to underline one of numerous areas that we delved into in post-game straight afterwards and a day later, where I think a lot of the frustrations that are out there were kind of looked into. The bonnet was lifted, if you like. This is really interesting stuff from Billy Joe here on one of the key matchups that Mayo fans feel like was crucial to the outcome of the game.
The Damien Comer McBride matchup, like we spoke about it on the pod all last week. He was the only man for the job, and he got the job, but he didn't get a whole lot of help. And I was listening to James Horan, dissecting that analysis or analysing that aspect of the game, and he felt that there wasn't enough structure to the Mayo defensive system, in that Coyne, Cullinane, McLaughlin so often were up the field joining attacks, that when they broke down or Galway got that direct ball in, Mayo hadn't got a player back to cover. Were you surprised, Billy Joe, at how Mayo tried to defend Comer, and that it went on as long as it did? I mean, what were the alternatives for the Mayo management team when Comer was getting on so much ball, and what was it, involved in, I think, 7 Was it of Galway's first half scores, or 7 of their first 9 scores maybe in the game?
I was surprised. I wasn't surprised so much that the game started like that. Look, I suppose I was happy enough. Colin's points about the goal chances are absolutely valid. And if they'd gone in the early stages, it's a totally different game even in that first half. But I suppose as a Mayo supporter, you'd come away from the first half thinking, okay, this is the sort of game you want to play. You want to control possession. You want to... you're playing into a slight breeze against the scoring goal, in my impression, in Pearse Stadium. I'm okay with that. And then I was okay that you let McBride run on a one-on-one to start the game. But when it became really obvious, and it didn't take long for it to be obvious, like 8, 9, 10 minutes, that Comer was really on it and that they were keen to get the ball into him at every opportunity, then you have to pivot and you have to bring people back and protect them and help McBride out. You can't leave him on that island alone for 2 reasons. You obviously don't want to concede the big scores. You don't want McBride to have really difficult afternoon, because that's what he had. But then you have to recognize personalities. And Comer is a huge personality in that game of football. He was always going to be a big personality in that game of football because of the type of player he is. If Galway were going to win this game, they needed him to be an all-action hero, basically doing everything. And he was. And he lifted every one of his teammates around him. He lifted the whole crowd behind him. And that's when you let him play. Players, he's kind of touch for the spectacular at times, Comer. He's physical, he's abrasive, he's dynamic, and he's direct. You have to keep him out of the game, because it's more than what he does even on the stat sheet, Mike, and the stats are impressive after last games. He is the emotional heartbeat of that team. He drives them on, drives the crowd on. And you have to recognize, as Mayo going into that game, is that it's important to keep him quiet, not just for the stats. It's important to keep him quiet just for the atmosphere, the mood in the whole place, the mood of their whole team. And they didn't do that. And that's another reason why I was really, really surprised and disappointed that we didn't have a better plan in play to keep him out of the game as much as you can.
Yeah, that's an interesting analysis, Rob, because I think going into the game, when people were picking their matchup, they'd say, well, there's only one man for Comer, and that's McBride. And clearly, from early on, you could see he was in big trouble. And that was a major shock to us, I think, because we would have expected that David McBride would have been a physical match for Comer. And that he would have been able to take him on man, and that clearly didn't turn out to be the case. No, that's a very good clip, and I think a lot of our coverage, post game, Rob, has attempted to get to the heart of the matter, but to do so in an analytical way, because I think it's fair enough to say that a lot of the post match reaction has been extremely emotional. And as I think the late Brian Lennon famously said one time, emotion is not policy, and emotion is all very well, but emotion is the sort of stuff that you express in the pub after the game. And too much emotion is something I know a lot about, having to deal with it on the blog after the game when people lose the run of themselves. It doesn't really add a whole pile, to the sum total of post-match analysis. If all you can do is to go around effing and blinding about something, so I think we can be content with the analysis that we've produced post game, and where we've attempted to break down why the game ended up the way it did and why we didn't succeed in winning the Nestor Cup.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's important to just kind of note that there's been some absolute brilliant kind of considered content both on our Discord channel. I love the rewatch comments that were on there. Just a couple of people look back at the game and kind of, wrote pieces that I hadn't thought about since the 69th minute of the match on Sunday, where I felt that Mayo ultimately were on top, had more of the ball, used it better, seemed to be just figuring out the one brilliant player for Galway, who was Comer. They weren't figuring him out, but surviving him, because he was outstanding. And outside of that, a couple of other Galway players like Finian had stepped up, but they weren't really dominating midfield. They had to make a lot of early changes. Their defence was in trouble. Fitzgerald was fouling Aidan O'Shea every chance he got. It was frustrating the way Mayo were playing in terms of not getting more out of that. But and Colin Reap had saved us. I even heard Gary Sice say on the Examiner podcast, I think Paul Rouse, who has felt all year that Galway are better than Mayo and has been writing Mayo off the last 18 months, was saying, Galway could have had a couple of goals as well, as if they were miles there. But Gary Sice himself said that had Galway scored that goal, you think it might have poked Mayo out of their slumber. So, I mean, that tells you a lot about the thinking in Galway, rather than thinking, we would have kicked on and dominated. But yeah, just some of the analysis on Discord, just to get back to my point, was brilliant in the rewatch analysis, which just maybe is worth noting. There's a lot of justifiable frustration, John, at the way Mayo lost this game, but there has to be a bit of realism as well in terms of not all is lost just yet based on the performance.
Yeah, for sure. And there's the group stages to play now, and the focus has turned to the Cavan game. I think the remaining frustration, is our method of play and our labour build up, and the fact, as Billy Joe was saying, that we're playing, we look way too safe, and as Colin Keys is saying as well, there isn't enough chaos, and I'd agree with that as well. The question now, obviously now for management, do they stick with the way they were playing, and certainly Mayo supporters will not be happy if they do, because they don't like it. And much of the joy of following Mayo was the chaotic nature of the day. You didn't know what was ever going to happen, but you did know that at some point we were going to bring the chaos, and it was going to be glorious. And we're not getting that anymore, and that is, I think that is a factor which is turning the Mayo public off this team to a large degree, and I think the Cavan game is big for more reasons than one.
Just one thing on it, right? I like a certain amount of the controlled possession that we do, because we didn't do enough of it under James Horan at times, so it's the counterbalance to that. There are times when I do like the decision to hold the ball and build the tempo and carve out the opening, but so I'm listening to fans sometimes shouting, kick it in. I'm like, no, not yet. There's nothing on. So I think fans need to be aware of that. It can't just be mindless attacks. But what I hate is the lack of support for players when we take a short kick out. That's a massive thing for me. There's guys like kick outs from Reap to Brickenden and stuff, and McHugh, they were brilliant, and no one with them. And then everyone's wondering why Loftus is enveloped. Did he make a bad decision to turn back in? Yeah. Did he have anyone within 25 metres of him? No. What's going on? Where's the work rate? Where's their willingness to support? And the second thing is, and we know this, John, when balls turned over, we are not transitioning fast enough. And I think that's critical. Thirdly, it's that overplaying the control possession. It's that 3 or 4 switchbacks and forth that people are going absolute berserk at.
Yeah, it's almost as if we're trying to play the modern game in inverted commas, like the rubbishy old kind of game that so many counties play, but we're not committing fully to that. But it's like we're confused as to what style we're playing, and the Mayo public don't like it for sure. So I think I said the Cavan game is going to be big in terms of where we go.
A lot to come. Mayo trying to finish at least second in the group, so they get a home game and avoid some of the second seeds in the other group. If they do that and they get through a preliminary quarterfinal, we've said it before, it nearly blows your chances having to play an extra game in the week, and we know that. But the one crumb of comfort is they won't have Dublin in the quarterfinal, which would be next or near impossible under those circumstances. They could have Kerry, which sounds pretty bloody hard, but the psychology of having won in Killarney, the fact that Kerry won't have been tested one bit, could be beneficial. We saw last year, we said that about Dublin last year, and it didn't matter. They peaked for that quarterfinal and destroyed us. Will Kerry do that? Possibly, maybe not. And the other team Mayo could get is Donegal, perhaps, or Armagh, whoever wins the Ulster title. That could be a really interesting fixture for a Mayo team that might have tweaked a few things, improved a good bit, got back to kind of some of the form that we saw in Killarney last year, in the league title last year. These are all very optimistic outlooks. I'm not saying I believe this is going to happen if people are like, oh, there he goes. I'm just saying it is ridiculous if you don't think it's possible that this Mayo team might find some form and might get into a quarterfinal with, for once, a more favourable draw. If Galway top their group, they cannot get Galway. They can't play Galway again until at least the semi-finals, and it's avoided if possible. They can't get Dublin in a quarterfinal because they're in their group. So there are two things that look a little bit better than before Having said that, will they get to a quarter-final, John? They're going to have to play well against Cavan Roscommon to have a chance, and they're going to need a bit of fortune as well in that draw in the Premier quarter-finals. And this is all presuming that Dublin will be too strong for the Mayo team that we saw in that Connacht final, and I think that's a safe assumption for now, but you never know.
Yeah, that's it. And like everything else, it's going to come down to player availability as well, because I think if Jeremy O'Connor is back and he's firing well, then that's a big plus for us. Same with Paddy Durkin. Same, I would argue, with Killian as well. If we can find a way to use Killian more effectively and get away from this pre-planned rote change of Aidan out, Killian in, which I think is we're all so sick of. But
stop having Killian running around the pitch. Just leave him inside.
Oh no, absolutely. That's what I'm saying, Rob.
If you're going to play him at all, yeah.
We need to think about Killian in the mould of Andy Moore in 2017.
Yeah.
Get the ball into him and get him there as the shooter. But there's a lot of imponderables there. And it's not clear, obviously James Carr is out now. He had a procedure done on his knee, which is going to see him out. And given the short nature of the season, it's very hard to see him playing any part. So I think aside from that, I think whoever we have. And the question is, can we make better use of the players at our disposal than we've been able to date?
Coming up next week will be another podcast, and we'll be looking forward. And I think as we release ourselves from the Connacht final, which I think a certain amount of the fallout was just shaped by the way they lost it late on, and the general sense at the end that what it meant to Galway probably shaped it as well. But I think people will have moved on, and unlike any other time Mayo have lost in the Connacht Championship, they're in the same stage as the guys who won it. Whether you like it or not, it's nonsense. And not just probably, they definitely have a better group than the team that won it. I won't hear anyone tell me otherwise. Both those sides have a lot of improving to do, Mayo and Galway, and you can do more improvement, I'd say, outside of trying to play Derry and the Ulster runners up. That's just my take. We got some.
Yeah, it's still a tricky group though, Rob. I think there'll be nothing easy out of Cavan. I know they've lost your man Lynch with the ACL. There'll be nothing easy about going back to Hyde Park to face the Rosties.
I agree, John. And nothing we saw the last day suggests that we can, or last year against Louth and Cork, suggests we can be overconfident.
Yeah, but also even in taking Oisin McConville's point about he doesn't think Mayo will get out of the group. I think there's a bigger danger not getting out of the group we're in than the other group, for the simple reason that Westmeath are in the other group.
Well, I don't know, winning in Mullingar.
No, but all day long you're going to beat Westmeath. I mean, come off it, Rob. So? If we don't beat Westmeath, we should be in the bloody Tailteann Cup. Do you know what I mean?
I would honestly put Cavan in that same level. I don't think Cavan have improved that much.
Yeah,
I think
fair
Cavan
point.
And Westmeath are very much around the same level. But also, I think it's that kind of. You said it, like we've lost by a point to Galway, who Oisin McConville no doubt has in the last four, and as a serious force that could be an outside threat for the All-Ireland, I'm sure. Oisin McConville, by the way, had predicted Mayo to win, I think, 3 of the last 6 All-Ireland finals they're in, so if you could take his predictions with a pinch of salt of us finishing bottom, but I did think it was kind of like ridiculous analysis. Yes, Mayo could technically finish bottom, but Mayo have not lost to these teams that are below them. They have played dreadfully against teams like Louth. We remember 6 points down against Clare in a qualifier years ago. There's always poor performance from Mayo, but they seem to just get over the line. The fear is what happened in Cork last year could happen again, and Roscommon are the same type of level of team. So there's loads of reason to be concerned about where Mayo are and not super confident about them getting 2 wins out of this, or even, but like 1 win. I think it's to be a ridiculous collapse if Mayo were to lose all 3 games. I'm just saying it can happen.
Yeah, no, it would. But I think the fact that we didn't get the job done on Sunday in a broadly similar manner to how we didn't get the job done against Cork, and how we almost didn't get the job done against Louth. This is a different team compared to like that team that went 6 points down to Clare. Was a very, very different team to the one now, and John, that is the fear I would have.
The Roscommon game a few weeks back, people are forgetting this. We took Aidan O'Shea off, and we nearly lost. At the end of the day, we won the game, but there was a spell there. Had they got a goal, we were getting worried. So there's a lot to be said for how Mayo close out games now. All right, coming up this weekend, another bonus final whistle podcast, because we're going to be at the Connacht final in Kiltoom, just outside Athlone. Mayo against Galway. We're looking forward to that. Myself and yourself going to that. And watching this team, hoping that they can kick on from a league campaign where people said they were going to be relegated. They got some great results in. I was down at the Kerry game. They got a great draw. They had brilliant result against Cork. And yeah, just maybe this Mayo team can continue to evolve with a Connacht title, which will give them a nicer group in the group stages, which start in June, and more importantly, which would give them a Connacht title.
Yeah, it would, yeah, because I think if they win, they get the runners up in Leinster, whereas if they lose,
Munster.
Is it Munster? Is it right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And Laois are waiting for the winners. And Laois are struggling. Kildare and I think you might be right. The winners of Leinster are coming up for the team that fails.
Yeah, and isn't Diana Horace managing Kildare? So there's a different. I think she's still there. So there's
they're improving as well. They did okay this year.
They are. Yeah. So it's an interesting few weeks coming up now with the women, and a chance for revenge over Galway, of course, for last Sunday. So we'll be looking to the women to put right all the ills of last Sunday.
Sunday at 2:00, and maybe at the end of that one we can bring you a wrap. So we won't have seen the Mayo under 20s in their B semi-final against Down, but we'll bring you an update on that, because that's on the same time. We'll wrap up the weekend stuff as well and set the scene for Cavan the following week. Loads more to come. We'll have another podcast dropping into your feed in a couple of weeks' time, but you know what to do. Patreon.com/Mayo podcast is where you'll find us for €1 a week plus VAT. You get all this amazing content and more. It doesn't stop. 12 months a year. Keep in touch and keep up to date with all the conversations around Mayo football. Join the Discord and get involved. In the meantime, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. John, take care.
Cheers, Rob.